Hello and welcome to the Mobile Accessible Games interview series. I'm your host, Aaron Spelker. Mobile Accessible Games is a group that is dedicated to all things about mobile accessible gaming. And through our interview series, we interview game developers as well as accessibility influencers about the state of accessible gaming. And today we have one of the premier accessible games. We have Lee Hobbs and Nick Barbato from Diceworld, creators of Diceworld, and from the company of App Ally. Guys, welcome.
Thanks for having us here, Aaron. It's great what you're doing.
Thank you very much. So I'd like to, give each of you, Lee and Nick, each a chance. Just tell us, who you are, what you do for the company, and what other pertinent information we should know about
you. You want to start, Nick? Or you want...
Yeah, go ahead.
My name's Lee Hobbs. Nick and I have known each other for probably over 25 years. We started working together over 25 years ago, and in IT as IT consultants. We've been roommates. We've been at each other's weddings. So we've known each other for quite a while, and we've kind of had one of our common threads is a disdain for the cubicle, which we always kind of found ourselves in. So at some point, Nick spun up Diceworld, and at some point he invited me into it, and we started App Ally, and it's been a fun adventure.
So you've known each other for 25 years. How long have you been together at the company?
I think Lee joined in 2016. Is that right?
I think so. Yeah.
So it's been a while now. Yeah.
And then Nick, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. So like Lee said, we've known each other forever. Both had, we met at we went to the same college, Chico, but never ran into each other there, I don't think. But started at the same crappy corporate company back in a long time ago. And like he said, I think the hate of the cubicle and the hate of government projects and working on boring stuff kind of drove doing our own thing. So I started the game with another guy in 2012, I think. So it's been 10 years, which is crazy to me. Mm-hmm. What started that was, I think, same thing. We were working on big government systems that is just a meaningless, soulless job. So iOS came out, and I programmed all day, every day. I had never had a Mac. Everything had been on PC. I got my first iPhone, and then they opened the App Store, and it was like, hey, I can create something, and distribution's taken care of. It was just like a developer's dream, right? So you get to create something, even if only 10 people played it, you got to create something that you created and 10 people are out there playing.
Sure.
So I went and got my first iMac and just learned everything there was to learn about Xcode and coding and for iOS. It's all the same. Programming, once you've been doing it forever, you can go from language to language pretty much, or interface to interface.
Little different syntax, but same concept.
Yeah, but it all kind of transitions across.
So it sounds like your day job was something in computer programming, it sounds like.
Yeah, all day, every day, forever. Even since I was like 12 with my first Commodore 64. So always been kind of a nerd that way, but iOS came out and was like, hey, I'm just going to give this a shot. So that's kind of how Diceworld got me and another guy who's also a programmer at a large company started the company, created the game. I played a lot of Words with Friends back in the day, and that's the turn-based Scrabble game,
right? And
wanted to play something else, and said, hey, we can do this. We can create a game that's multiplayer. There's not graphics intensive or anything like that. Decided to do it with dice games and wanted to have multiple dice games. So I think the first version had 3 games. It was Farkle, Balut, and Yahtzee. So when it first came out, it was 3 games. And the way we came into the accessibility part was I got an email through our support email, and we barely had any users, but luckily one of the users said, hey, I just want to thank you for making your game, somewhat accessible. And at that time, I didn't even know what that meant. So
this is really early on, like you've just gotten the game out.
2012 is probably, the game was out for like maybe a month. And the email from this lady, Tara, she said, thanks for making it somewhat accessible. And I didn't know what that meant. So I went and, Google it and then found out about voiceover and stuff. And luckily I had labeled, just the naming conventions in the game. The button was labeled with the function of the button. So that was good on some of it. But I mean, a lot of it was just a hack, right? So then dug in and started learning more about voiceover and what iOS was doing with voiceover and accessibility, and learned everything we could learn, and then started just kind of going deeper with it instead of just labeling buttons and using some swipes and stuff like that. There's kind of just started adding in like a whole nother game within the game for voiceover users. So I mean, there's a lot of stuff that exists there for voiceover users that doesn't exist for the sighted users, to give them the same kind of efficiency and speed when they're playing and kind of describe things that's going along. But yeah, I mean, that's how we got into doing it accessible. It got very interesting. Then once you start getting emails and saying, hey, thank you so much, I'm able to play with my my sighted brother or my sighted whatever. That starts feeling good. Instead of getting just railed on at your crappy corporate job all day, you're getting nice emails, right? Well, so I went all in on it.
Yeah, I mean, so there's some interesting things there. I mean, so Diceworld, I wrote an article recently for PocketGamer.com that was the 10 most influential accessible mobile games that have come out in the last 10 years. And Diceworld is on that list, which is why I reached out to you guys to interview you. And it's really interesting to me learning here today that Diceworld was not, it sounds like, not originally created for the blind community. It was just a game that you created that you learned early on. I need to add some accessibility into it from Tara. Thank you, Tara. And what I find really interesting is, when I first went blind and I asked people, okay, what games can a blind person play, and I'm asking this on blind support groups. I mean, 9 times out of 10 the answer was Diceworld. I mean, I can't think of a blind person I know who has not played Diceworld at some time. So do you think it's just that really early adoption of 10 years ago, being maybe one of the first people to really create a fully accessible game for the blind people that has really garnered the attention and the love of the blind community, that so many people have played that and reference your game on a daily basis for other blind people to play?
I think that's part of it. I also think, so you can make a game accessible. You can make it like somewhat accessible just by labeling stuff, and people can get in there and play. But I think to really focus on accessibility it's quite an effort. It takes, and plus you got to have some pretty thick skin, because I've seen in some of your other interviews, when I think one of your the people you were interviewing was just kind of stressing, hey, if you want something to be accessible, reach out to the developer and ask them and work with them. But 9 times out of 10, that's not the way it goes. It's hey, you jackass, this doesn't work. And so I mean, you got to have pretty thick skin to stick with it, and then you're like, why am I doing all this? But
I mean, we talk often about reach out and request and be nice. These are real human beings on the other side who are just doing their best to make your game accessible, and might not just be aware that that button's not labeled. They did not do it intentionally to deny you anything. Just be nice.
Yeah, I mean, they're really, and it's good. I mean, lately accessibility has become more to the forefront, as Microsoft did a great job with that with their Super Bowl commercial back in a few years ago that kind of brought everything up. But I mean, I would say a lot of developers have no idea. So if you reach out and you're nice and let them know, I mean, we just want to have more users and make people happy, right? So
absolutely.
Yeah, anyway, and I think I'm just kept sticking with it. We have a great group of users that reach out, give us some great feedback. Worked with AppleViz early on, and a few. I don't know if you've met Thomas Domville. Have you had a chance to meet him?
No, not him. No.
He's great. He's one of the AppleViz. He has a podcast on AppleViz, but he's been doing it for. He was, I think, our first interview back in the day, which kind of introduced us to the whole accessibility community. But yeah, just people like that, and the good emails, the good users, and the hatred for the corporate world will keep Diceworld going forever.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, the other thing, as you said, I mean, you can make, the bare minimum of label some buttons, but there is that extra layer that it's on, that you've done in your game that again allows not only just to be accessible, but to be, functional and efficient. You know what I mean? So that when I'm playing against somebody who may or may not be cited on the other side, I don't feel like I'm slowing down the pace. I'm getting the information quickly in the game. I can respond quickly. I can keep that game going, and not feel like I have to search around and hunt and peck to find the information I need to play any of the games on Diceworld. So I think that's one of the things that really has people engaged and playing it, because it makes it not just an accessible play, but it makes it an efficiently accessible play. When you play Diceworld.
Yeah, and I mean, I do the best I can with putting on a voiceover and blacking out the screen and playing. But still, I mean, you have to be like a daily user of voiceover to really give the good feedback. So I encourage people like, hey, there's stuff that I haven't even thought of, or I try to tell people, just ask for what you wish could happen, and maybe it's not possible, maybe it is possible. I don't know, but we'll see. And hey, if I can swipe this way and have this happen instead of having to navigate down to a button, or just stuff like that. People are afraid to ask, I think, because they're afraid of turning off the developer. But ask for everything, and then maybe you'll be a little disappointed, maybe you'll be happy.
One of the hints that I will give people, because a lot of people just don't know, how do I reach the developer in the first place? So, some hints I will give people is, a lot of times if you go to the settings of the game, there will be a contact us button there. Or if you go to the Apple App Store, go past where all the reviews are, there is a support button that often takes you to the person's website and or email directly. So those are two ways that you could go and find out how to contact the developer. So again, just be nice when you do it, and ask respectfully whatever thing.
You don't have to be nice. I mean, we're not going to hold any grudges, but don't be mean.
Right, exactly. Now, Lee, Nick told us a little bit about his, computer programming background as a kid, and his Commodore, and doing the corporate world and doing things. Do you have a similar sort of background, or is your background different, or do you have a computer background at all?
I was an accounting major, and I'm always kind of on the fringe. I've done IT consulting forever, and I'm always kind of on the technical side, but I'm really not Nick is he's a ninja when it comes to developing, and that's not me. So I have developed, but we're a better company and a better game when I'm not touching anything. So I try to do everything else.
So you're like,
so Lee's taking care of all of our, I mean, he keeps the customers happy. He's got a much better face and better. Sometimes I'll get frustrated and snap back in an email. I get a little moody sometimes, but Lee is always awesome. He's keeps all the customers happy. He does all our design work. I mean, there's so many different moving parts, and there's only two of us, that just kind of jumps in and takes care of whatever needs to be taken care of. And hopefully someday we can hire some people and get a bigger team going. But right now, we're just trying to stay afloat.
all right.
Yeah,
So yeah. Well, I was going to say, so the team is the two of you, with Nick, you primarily doing developing, and Lee, you primarily doing operations and everything else.
Yeah, you're looking at the team.
Nice. And over the course of the 10 years, you said you started with 3 games. Yes, you're up to 6 now within Diceworld. Is there, looking to add a 7th, or what's kind of the next progression for Diceworld?
Yeah, I mean, the next progression for Diceworld, so currently right now we both also have full-time jobs back in that corporate world, just because we have full-time wives and full-time kids too. So that's been a challenge. So right now it's Diceworld all night and corporate world all day. And the big challenge right now is getting Diceworld. So the next big update for Diceworld is going to be all the social stuff has been rewritten. So new social groups, forums, the in-game chat, anything that has to do with communication between players is being redone, because it was written a while ago and it has not been updated or kept pace with the way things should work. There's a lot of glitchiness in there, especially for the voiceover users. So anyways, that's all going to get better, but it was a lot of work, and it's got to go through. One of the big challenges is because they do development in Xcode for iOS, and then in Android Studio for Android. So, and the only reason we have to do that, and you can steer me back to the question if I start getting way off here, but the reason we have to use both tools is to take advantage of the accessibility tool sets that are available on iOS and Android. So there's TalkBack in Android,
right?
VoiceOver in iOS, right? And if you, like, a lot of games aren't accessible because they are made with a tool set that you can just kind of send to iOS, send to Android, but you code it once, like in Unity.
Right.
And we tried that, but Unity still doesn't have a very good accessibility tool set. It's all external plugins. And then Unity will come up with an update and then break everything. So that happened with our game world, where all of a sudden things just stopped working.
Right.
So the big challenge is trying to sync our releases between Android and iOS, and especially with this new version coming out where everything's changing. The second iOS gets released, all the communication channels between an iOS player and an Android player
right.
are broken, right?
Right.
So then they can't talk to each other. So I know that's going to be a big storm of emails when that first comes out, because, hey, I'm not getting my chats back. Nobody's responding to me. So
can you do
one
things
developer, and then
can you do things
trying
like
to get them,
put a splash screen, in the lead up to that sort of thing to let people know, like, communication will be disrupted?
I mean, we'll do all that. It's just, but that still doesn't make it so
stop people
to each other. So the thing is to try to sync those, but to try to sync those with one developer, and I've got to get both of them working and both of them through tests and try to release them at the same time, ends up with these crazy delays. We've been waiting for an update for Diceworld for a while, and this is the reason why. It's just trying to get everything synced up and make sure that when it pushes out, everything doesn't blow up. So
that's an interesting thing that I've learned here along the way, and I think a lot of gamers don't realize is, so you created this game at the start, 10 years ago, but it's like a child, and you never stop having to engage with it. There's maintenance, on a regular basis with, iPhone, iOS system updates, that can break something that you have to go in and tweak and fix, or you're trying to upgrade, this system or that system. I mean, once you create a game, it's not you create it and then you wash your hands of it and walk away and you start creating the next game, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I thought. Like when we first started, it was, hey, let's put a game out there and then go live on an island, and money just keeps coming in forever, right?
Right.
But nope, that's not what happens. iOS comes out and will break everything. Android, especially. Android comes out and their versions, and not only that, but they have 8,000 different possible devices out there, all made from very good quality down to just pieces of crap you can get for $20.
Right.
And some of those, I mean, they have memory leaks, they have this and that, and trying to keep Android solid and stable is really a challenge, especially with the TalkBack stuff, because people configure their phones so they customize so many different things on Android, and then they have so many different devices and manufacturers, and plus their own flavor of the operating system. That becomes a challenge. iOS is nice that way because it's just a solid system.
Do you have statistics on, how many people, like what, percentage of Dice World players play on an Android versus play on an iPhone?
Yeah, Dice World, and I mean, it's driven by the accessibility, because I think most accessible, most voiceover, most users that need the accessible options are iOS. I mean, they tend to go to voiceover because I think it's better for accessibility than TalkBack. TalkBack's getting better.
Right.
So we have probably about, it might be 1/3 Android, 2/3 iOS.
So do you ever have like a business decision to say, for the headache of Android, do I just let that 1/3 go and just focus on iOS and save myself the headache, or is,
well, we need
how do
every
you-
user we can possibly get. So, and I mean, TalkBack is getting better, and Android is the major provider globally. So, I mean, we're not going to give up on Android. Android definitely does get kind of stepchild treatment, I guess, when it comes to new features and stuff. iOS gets first bidding on when people are asking for stuff, and iOS is definitely sharper. And I mean, if we can get another developer to focus on Android, I'd love to sync the two up in quality. But right now, I think iOS is the better game, and Android, we're trying to keep up. And unfortunately, that's just the way it has to be until we get more resources.
Over the 10 years that you've had Dice World, is it, is the user base just consistently grown, or is it, did it peak one year and now it's kind of stabilized at a level? How is the the amount of players?
It's remarkably stable. It's not growing, but it's not going down, which is nice. I mean, it's kind of flatlined and just stays at the same amount of users. I think that's due to, I mean, we don't have any marketing budget. We don't do any advertising. It's all word of mouth. The good thing about our game is that so we probably have about 40% blind users and then 60% sighted users.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that, I mean, you can invite anybody, you don't like saying, hey, I found an audio game, and then invite a sighted user who has no idea how to navigate around in it. This one is just a level playing field. Anybody can play. I mean, I never know if I'm playing somebody who's not blind or blind.
Right, exactly.
And they're just as fast playing. So I kind of went off track on your question.
No, that's, I mean, the thing that, you were talking about, like words with friends and stuff like that. There's not many games for the blind community to engage in a, social water cooler type of game, of which, Dice World, has that experience where I can invite all my friends to play, and, and then, hold over their head that I beat them, or have them, hold over me that they beat me. Like it gives you that socialization that there aren't that many games that are available to us like that, mostly because we can't really move fast enough for that to be a great experience, and keep up with the gameplay. But in Dice World, you can, and you can have that socialization and connection to, not only a bunch of blind people. I think you've created a really interesting blind community around Dice World, but I can, as you said, play against a sighted person, and I don't know if they're blind or sighted. We're both keeping pace against each other. So I think that's a great feature of Dice World. To be able to have that kind of, social connection, which again, there's a lot of isolation in blindness. Just, it's harder to connect, and to be able to connect over a game is, gives us that kind of experience that other people get to have as well. Why Dice World? I mean, when you were originally coming out and creating a game, what made you decide, I'm going to create dice games? Why was that the thing that you decided to do?
I think, well, in the beginning, I was playing this Farkle game, and I liked Farkle. I had never played Farkle before. And it was just a one-person game. So I wanted to play against other people, like Words with Friends. That's what kind of started it. And then said, why only Farkle? We have the whole framework here. We can make other games and add them to them. So then we ended up with 6 games going in it. And then, I mean, like, we want to add more games. Like, the idea was to keep adding dice games so people have like a long list of dice games they can play. But the balancing between going from Android to iOS and syncing them up, that's the challenge right now. So, I mean, we have the roadmap to add more games. I mean, there's no limit to the amount of games we can put in there except for how many dice games there are. It's just getting them working on both platforms and syncing them up. And right now, the focus has just been on the social aspect, trying to make it just a friendly community for people around the world to connect and play games in a non-toxic Twitter-like environment.
Is there, I mean, does anyone own rights to something like Farkle, or is it just, anyone could create a Farkle game?
The only thing that, like, Yahtzee, Hasbro has the rights to Yahtzee, but just like the spelling of the way that they spell Yahtzee. So Yahtzee's been a game that's been around forever.
Sure.
All these are just like they're not brand names, they're game names. Like if we did something like Monopoly or something like that, Monopoly is like a trademarked name we shouldn't be able to use. I think there's a bunch of monopolies out there, and we've gotten calls from Hasbro, which is kind of, I don't even know why it would be on their radar, but they had somebody reach out to us and say, hey, you can't use this name. But it was, for the most part, I mean, we're small. We don't infringe on anybody's rights. We have Diceworld is our trademark. So, yeah, I mean, we don't, all those are just basic names for games.
Gotcha. The other thing I was going to mention when we were talking about, the amount of users, a lot of these social connection games, after 10 years, I mean, you try to go find someone to play with and it is dead out there. You find nobody. I mean, the fact that I can pick up Diceworld right now after it being a game for 10 years and find someone instantly to play against is, a real testament to the staying power of the game.
Yeah, I think we're lucky that way. And I think that we have the accessible community to thank for that too. So yeah, we just focus on trying to keep everybody happy and everybody connected. And that's why this whole focus on the social aspect of the game, just to get that as best as we can, I think is really important. The days are gone where you can just throw a game out there and people accept that, hey, this was an indie developer. Now, I mean, it's really got to look professional and compete with the big guys. And the big guys have a lot of money.
Sure.
But the big guys are also focused on their money and not focused on the stuff that we think is important, like accessibility and communication. I mean, I know Lee gets back to everybody who emails. So we try as best we can to just be in front of it, but at the same time, we fall behind.
Now, is there another IP that you are thinking of creating? Is there anything besides dice games that you're contemplating of adding to the App Store for people to play?
Well, so right now we have a video poker game out there I think it's fun. I'm addicted to it. But we had Game World. So Game World was going to be like Dice World, but better. So that's when we created it with Unity. Mm-hmm. And that became the accessibility maintenance issue. So Game World is still out there. I mean, it has such great potential, but right now with the Unity tool set, it makes it impossible for us to update it right now, which really sucks.
So that had accessibility.
Yeah, it had Hangman, it had like a word search, a bunch of really cool games, and they're all accessible. But as new iOS versions come out that have kind of stepped on some of the accessibility stuff that we had that is in there, they weren't compatible together. So now, I mean, Game World doesn't have many users daily right now, and it's really a shame because it was going to be a great game. It's just that we don't have the tool set to maintain it right now.
Yeah, like Diceworld, it was going to be a hub of a whole bunch of different types of games.
It was eventually, I mean, when we first came out, it was called a Haboodle. So it was like where everybody, it was the hub for everybody to get together. And that was going to be, you could go, you meet in this one room, but then you could play any kind of game. There was a blackjack, there's hangman, there's tons of different games in there, except for that hurdle. So it was either make Game World completely not accessible and keep putting games out, but that doesn't really go with our vision for the company. We want everything to be fully accessible and playable by sighted and blind and be entertaining to both. So we're still, that's the main goal. It's just the resources, like I said. So right now, the main focus is Diceworld. We're going to be adding the social stuff. We're going to adding new computer characters to play in. This next version has a few more coming out in it. We've got a great voiceover guy, so we wanted to keep adding, like every month, add a new character who's funny to play. And a lot of that stuff. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, like with that part, that the adding new AI and maybe just even the mechanics of the game. I mean, is that something too when you started and said, oh, I'm going to create a Yahtzee game, that like behind it is so much like, how do you write the code to actually have this game work and for the AI to take, actions that make sense and not just do crazy things? Like it seems like I always think about that, that aspect of the actual coding behind the scene, that nothing is as easy as when you're playing it, that there's a lot of that goes into it. So, what was difficult about creating Diceworld from a coding standpoint?
Well, I mean, if you think about it, on the base level, it's pretty simple, because the rolling of the dice is just a complete random number generator.
Right.
Although people, I mean, you'll read our reviews online and we get emails and people saying it's fixed. I just lost 3 games in a row. How is that mathematically possible?
Right.
Like, come on, you think I want you to lose? Why would I fix the game against you, for one thing?
Right.
If anything, I would make it so you'd win and be happy.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, a lot of people think that it's fixed. I got an email yesterday about a lady who wants me to change the algorithm because she hasn't won a tournament in a while. I was like, what do you want me to do? I can't cheat for you. So, and then as far as the computer player AI, that was kind of interesting. I mean, that's all the computer player, same thing. People think the computer players cheat. They don't cheat. They use the same exact random algorithm, only some of them are more risky. Like if they're behind by a certain amount, they just like go for it all and Farkle, and they'll just keep rolling and keep rolling. And sometimes they get lucky and they'll just wipe somebody out and they think that's cheating. But some of the players, we have, like, you can have some players set as risky, some of them who have like no risk, and it's just that's all coded in there, but it's not, the outcome of a roll is never coded in there.
Well, what about like Yahtzee, where you have like, well, do I use this to fill out my my full house, or do I use this for 6 sixes or multiple sixes?
Right.
Like, how do you get the computer to decide which one of those things to do?
Well, it's by character, really. So one character will always go for a Yahtzee no matter what, and then other characters play conservatively. We've got this next version coming out has a Lloyd from Dumb and Dumber in it, and he doesn't make some very good decisions on things. So yeah, all the AI is different per character, pretty much, slightly. I mean, not majorly, but slightly. And you can kind of see that if you look at their stats. Like the more risky characters, if you look at their overall stats, they've lost more games in Yahtzee than the conservative ones.
What about, from an accessibility standpoint? I mean, what was the hardest thing to add in for accessibility into Diceworld?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the hardest thing, the most challenging thing, is because we have to monetize it somehow to keep it going. And the advertisements, pretty much every advertiser. So we use a Google Ad Mob, and then there's a couple other ad brokers for, if you want an extra roll, you can, it'll pop up a video, you listen to a video, and you get the roll. And we tried to make it as as non-intrusive as possible, right? I mean, we didn't want somebody to come in, and I hate when I open up a game and then all of a sudden ad pops up and you got to wait, and then it goes away, and then ad pops up. At least in our game, you get to choose when you want to see an ad, or if you don't want to see an ad, you can just get some bonus rolls or earn them other ways. But back to the challenge. The challenge was most of these ads were created with a Unity type of framework that pops up a screen on top of your screen.
Right. So how do
And
you
all of the
exit it?
close buttons, like the close
Yeah.
button up in the corner, is not accessible, or is
Right.
invisible. So if you had a voiceover on, you can't close the ad. You had to shut the app down. And then every time the ad SDK that we have in there, their framework would come out with an update and completely change how they closed it, because they didn't think it was a big deal, right? I mean, they just moved their close button around. And
Right.
so we've got things to say, hey, if this ad didn't close, the button should be up in the right-hand corner. And I try to determine like what type of ad it is. I've got a lot of hacks in there now where I can figure out what ad was showing and then close it automatically by calling into their API, with trying to call their close method, which works sometimes. But there's still other times where somebody gets stuck, and that's a real pain.
Yeah, you got to get good at turning off voiceover and then tapping the upper right or upper left of your screen and hoping that you close it and then turn voiceover back on and see if it worked. That's like my workaround.
That's not a very good user experience.
Yeah. I stay away from videos unless I absolutely need to do it or I'm forced to watch it.
It's such a moving target.
What was that, Lee?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just going to say it's such a moving target. I mean, that's the problem. You think you get it, and then it's always changing, and there's always somebody that's not accessible, and we run into the same problems over and over.
Right. Or the person who just doesn't even think to turn voiceover off and then try tapping it out and turning it back on.
But they shouldn't have to. I mean,
they shouldn't have to
make it easier, right?
Exactly.
And then some of the ads now, they come up and it's like a quiz or something that they have to interact with, but that's not accessible. So we try to filter all that stuff out. People let us know, like, hey, this one popped up. I try to have people say, if there's an ad, let me know who the vendor was, or like what they're trying to sell you, and I'll just get rid of that one. I can usually blacklist them somehow, but we don't know until it occurs, which is kind of a bummer. So yeah, that's a big challenge with it.
So speaking of monetization, I mean, is that, again, like maybe just percentage breakdown, like do you get, 25% of your revenue from ads and then, 75% from, in-game purchases, or like, how does that break down for you? And is it the way that you thought it would be when you started Diceworld?
And when we started Diceworld, I had no idea. I mean, we were just completely clueless. But it's turned out to be about 40% ads and about 60% from in-app purchases or subscriptions. So yeah, like with the subscription, you can sign up and get access to everything that is like the dice, the sounds, the everything, unlimited rolls. Some people use that. Some people make it a game of the videos just to see how high they can get their bonus roll count. I think that's their main goal in the game, is just to see how many bonus rolls they can have. I'm not even sure if they use them. And then the in-app purchases, some people just buy a little stack of bonus rolls once in a while. But I mean, the whole game is designed to never really have to buy anything or to pop ads in front of you. It's just
you don't have to do those things. It's, again, by your choice.
Leveling up and winning stuff. And you can always kind of accumulate bonus rolls. I guess if you're just a hardcore player who only plays bonus games, I mean, there's also the option to play regular games, no bonus games, and you never need to watch a video. You never need to do anything. I mean, there's if you don't need a bonus roll, then there's no reason to spend money on anything.
Whoa.
So, but you should play bonus games. Something's got to pay the server and everything.
So, you were talking this a little bit earlier, where you were talking about accessibility being more mainstream, and some of other developers who don't add accessibility. Do you think that's just a lack of awareness? They haven't been informed about accessibility and to when to engage with accessibility? Is that what you think is kind of holding back other developers from adding accessibility into their games?
I think, well, awareness is part of it, but then the tool sets are a big part of it, because anybody making a game, you want to make it for iOS and Android, and you'd like to be also, I mean, web games are even coming back. So the tool sets available instead, I mean, like Diceworld is 2 completely different code sets, 2 completely different efforts. And you'd like to make a game where you code it once and then release it to everybody.
Right.
So that's the big challenge.
Which is why some
really
people
want
go
to
with
get
the
into accessibility and do accessibility like full on. You need to do it native, meaning iOS and Android. But then again, I mean, you can make things somewhat accessible and usable using Android. So I think awareness is definitely coming around. I mean, now I found a Discord group that Ian Hamilton's in and a bunch of others that I didn't know about. And, I mean, a lot has happened in the last few years that has really accelerated the awareness. Hopefully somebody with a bag of money decides that they want to create a tool set, because I mean, eventually everything's going to be fully accessible. That's just where we're headed.
Yeah, I mean, that's my hope with, because a lot of game developers use Unity, I think, again, for that, cross distribution aspect of it.
Unity is a great tool. I mean, especially for the graphics engine, and a lot of the stuff that it provides is great, and the cross platform is awesome.
Right. And
but the accessibility is a huge downfall. People have been complaining to Unity forever, but they won't do anything. So,
but now my hope is that they will. I mean, now that it's become more mainstream to talk about accessibility, and you have some big players who are engaging in accessibility, and it's part of the conversation. I think it's there's pressure on them to have accessibility solutions for developers, and so I'm hoping that'll move them towards providing those tool sets to developers.
Yeah, I mean, that'd be great, because we would definitely go back to using it, and it would accelerate our timelines.
Right.
Big time.
So when you think about Diceworld, what about Diceworld do you think is, I look at this and this is what makes me feel really good or feel successful about Diceworld? Is it, number of downloads? It's the feedback you're getting from, like the blind community? Is it, the money you've made? I mean, what is it that you think and you feel a real sense of pride when you think about Diceworld?
I'll say the feedback, the emails we get, the people that I've met over the years who are still playing, who still reach out. We've got, there's actually a few couples that have met on Diceworld that got married.
Nice.
Which is kind of crazy.
Yeah. You're like the World of Warcraft of, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and just the whole social community that are out there daily. Like I said, when you come from just a soulless corporate job where everything is meaningless, and then you're able to work on something that's actually making people happy, that's something.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Lee.
I was going to say it's easy to measure success by number of users or revenue generated, but Nick's right. Like the feedback is really the difference maker, and it is always nice when somebody tells you like what a difference it makes, or makes you feel like you're doing something something good or to help them.
Well, I was going to say that you're really beloved in the blind and visually impaired community as a game that lots of that group play and enjoy, and feel a sense of connection to, and feel again that I'm able to play on the same level as anybody else who's playing Diceworld, which makes you feel that you're part of the discussion and you're part of the gameplay. You're not a second-class citizen in Diceworld. You are playing on the same level as everybody else, and I think that's really what's gotten people to really enjoy it in our community. So I really thank Nick for thinking it up. I thank Tara for reaching out to you early on to get you thinking about accessibility, and Lee, I thank you for handling all the emails and not letting Nick respond when he's frustrated.
Nobody wants that.
Nobody wants that. Yes. Again, everybody, this was Nick Barbato and Lee Hobbs from Diceworld. They've created a great game. If you haven't played it, I can't believe it, but you should go out and play Diceworld. Lots of 6 different dice games that you can play with your friends, whether they be blind or sighted. Lots of great experiences on Diceworld, and I really encourage you. Again, if you want to learn more about Diceworld, you can read my article at PocketGamer.com about the 10 most influential mobile accessible games. Diceworld is first on the list because it was the ones that have come out in the last 10 years. And since you started in 2012, you were number 1 on the list because I went in chronological order. So that's a great article to read and also find out about other accessible games. I'm going to have all of the social media contacts, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all those type of things in the description of this YouTube video. So please, join and connect with Lee and Nick so you can see all the new updates that are happening with Diceworld and any new content that they have coming out. Nick and Lee, I'd like to turn it over to you right at the end. Any final words that you have to say to my community of blind and visually impaired gamers who are quite enjoying Diceworld?
I'd just like to say thank you. We appreciate the support and people playing the game. Continue playing, and we're always looking for beta testers. So if anybody wants to beta test a release, let us know.
All right, excellent.
Yeah, absolutely. Invite your friends and family, and if there's something you want changed in the game or something you want added to the game or something that's been bugging you forever and you've been playing, just let us know. The only reason things get changed is because people ask for it. A lot of times we haven't thought of something. There's only 2 of us, so we don't have any of the answers really. So if you've got an idea, let us know. Don't be afraid to reach out.
Great. Well, thank you. And again, thank you for creating a great accessible game. I really appreciate it. And we will look forward to all your new content and updates.
Yeah,
Thanks,
thank you.
Aaron.
Thanks for doing this series too. This series is awesome. It's great to get more word out there.
Right.
Yeah,
Thank you.
we totally appreciate the time. Thanks, Aaron.
You're welcome.